Good morning. I'm Jim McPherson. Welcome to Eagle Harbor Congregational Church on this wonderful last day of July. We are members of the United Church of Christ. That means that no matter who you are or where you happen to be on life's journey, you are always welcome here. And never put a period where God has placed a comma, because God is still speaking. The world changes, folks. A couple of quick announcements before we get into our service. As you know, the first thing we do is to say thank you to those who are participating today. And as we've become, unfortunately, accustomed to, Dee is on sabbatical, but we have had fabulous folks filling the pulpit throughout the summer. I'm sure you'll agree with me on that. Today, our sermonizer is Don Wilson, and he has some wonderful things to say to you today. Also assisting is our accompanist, Chris Mello, who is sort of like family. We see her a lot. Hi, Chris. She's taking over because Alice is in Denver this weekend. And Sheila is our song leader today. And of course, our tech person happens to be Reed today. Caleb was unavailable, so Reed is pulling yeoman's duty, assisting us with that. The first thing we are encouraging members of the church to gather in small groups to think and talk about the future of our church. And several of people are hosting and leading these conversations now through maybe this is a good time if you want to fill us in on one that's coming up. Aaron, you want to tell us about that? I know you've got a loud voice and you can tell us what you need. So if you've already been to one of these gatherings, you can't come, right? I think everybody's going to be there. I know. Maybe I'll show up at 3:30. Excellent. Thanks, Taryn. And thank you for filling us in on Mary. And I'm sure we'll talk about that at Prayers for the People. Also, something that you'll notice in your bulletin today. Today is our annual writing for Bread for the World. It's a letter writing campaign. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but it's written up in the bulletin. Take a few minutes when you can to read through that during the service today, not while Don's speaking, of course, but and then we will have a special time, which you'll note in your bulletin, for us to do that writing. It's about 5 minutes where Chris will sort of just give us some music to have it in the background, but you'll have about 5 minutes to write things down. I'm not sure if it says in here, but traditionally what we've done is you just leave them here. You can put them in the envelope, leave them here. We'll put stamps on them. You can just put the particular person you want it to go to, but we can fill in the address. I think the address is in there somewhere. But it's a good positive thing, and it helps. I think it helps. A personal message from us for Bread for the World. Also, tonight is, in fact, Super Supper. It's the last Sunday of the month. And Dan and Chris are running it for us this month. We're in pretty good shape. There are two other things that they would like if people could do for us, which is a large green salad and perhaps some peaches or nectarines, maybe a dozen of those. Hey, Chris, you got something else? Yeah, one large green salad and about a dozen, not a dozen salads, if I said that. But maybe some peaches or nectarines or some others that are already coming, so we want to fill that in. So if you can do that, that would be great. Two more final messages. One is that Mary Brown was going to be on pastoral call this upcoming week. As you know, she is an ordained minister and had her own congregation for years. Obviously, she can't do that. Bill Comfort has agreed to step in for Mary. And if you don't know how to get a hold of them, you can always get a hold of the office, so you can get a hold of anybody. Taryn is a wonderful resource for that. And call Sherry and say you need. The purpose of the pastoral call is for you to talk to the pastors. And if you're feeling uncomfortable for any reason at all, including the fact that one of our stalwart people is literally on the brink, and you want to talk about that with somebody who is wonderful at it, Bill is really good at it. I've done it. And Elise, of course, she has posted something on Basecamp that if you aren't on it, I want you to go, and if you are, go read it. She did that. Thank you, Elise, for telling us. She is a hospice chaplain and has been through this unfortunately, many times, and can give you thoughts and tell you how to deal with whenever these kind of crises come up. So please do that. And now, on a more positive note, she knows I'm going to do this, don't you? It's Rosalind's birthday today. And I'm going to get, Chris, do you know the birthday song? Happy birthday. Or do we have to do it a cappella? Let's sing to Rosalind. It's her birthday today. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Rosalind. Happy birthday to you. All right, on with the service. Let's move along. We begin worship today by acknowledging that the land on which we live and worship is the ancestral home of the Puget Sound Coast Salish people, specifically the Suquamish tribe. We acknowledge the harm brought about by land being taken from indigenous peoples generations ago, hurt that lingers today. We seek healing. As we learn to respect the cultural heritage of the Suquamish people, we recommit ourselves to our shared responsibilities to their homelands, where we all reside today. May the pouring of this salt water serve as a reminder of our solidarity with the Suquamish people, the people of the clear salt water. If you are able, please stand for the call to worship. There we go. For a world where the weak are protected and none go hungry or poor. For a world where personhood in all its forms is valued and respected. For a world where different races and cultures live in harmony and mutual respect. We pray, O God. For a world where peace is built with justice and justice is guided by love. We pray, O God. Give us the inspiration and courage to build it. Amen. Please remain standing for the opening prayer. Loving and accepting God, we seek your presence. Join us in fellowship as we search our hearts for ways to reach out to those in need. Please be with us, Lord, as we gather together to become a force for peace and justice. Help us to carry on when the way seems almost impossible, knowing that even a smile can lift a broken spirit, that a hand outstretched in friendship and love truly can make a difference. Please forgive us when we falter, pick us up when we fall, and give us the strength to carry on in your name. Finally, thank you, dear Lord, for the unending grace and mercy you have showered upon us as we now join our voices together with a prayer that Jesus taught us, saying, Our Creator, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And now let us pass the peace among us. Pass the peace.
Morning, Howard. I love my picture. Thank you. I have it right there to remind me. Good morning.
Good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Did you get up to see Mary? Did you say?
We saw Mary yesterday again.
She about the same?
A little less responsive.
Peace be with you too, God.
Peace.
Was she asleep?
She's not verbally responsive. She seemed to respond to open her eyes. Actually, open her eyes.
Could you feel? Did she do anything with her hand at all?
No, I didn't do that.
Okay. 'Cause I held her hand. I didn't feel anything.
So, she's semi-coma.
Nice. Peace.
Mary said her brother had called. So Mary's son called.
He's been here.
He called.
Uh-huh.
She was responsive for that.
Really? In what way? She does some girdling. She does some. Did she make any noises when you were there? She did with me a lot. I mean, lots. It was. I'll go to sing today. Are you going to sing it too? You want to walk up? Okay. Quarter of? My place?
Yes. Now, the Deuteronomy passages, I've stuck them in here because they're important. They were important to Amos. And these are the words that he lived by. And I don't remember all of them, but I do know that they have to do with the widow, the orphan, and the stranger at the gate. Today, we might call that person refugee. And as far as Amos is concerned, chapter 7, verses 12 through 15, Amos had been stirring things up, and they sent Amaziah out to reason with him. And Amaziah said to Amos, O seer, go flee away to the land of Judah. Earn your bread there and prophesy there, but never again prophesy at Bethel, for it is the king's sanctuary. It is a temple of the kingdom. Then Amos answered Amaziah, Look, I am no prophet, nor am I a prophet's son. I'm a herdsman and a dresser of sycamore trees. And God took me from following the flock, and God said to me, Go prophesy to my people Israel. Here he is. And if he'd lived a few centuries later, he would have responded to these words from Matthew, chapter 25, verses 35 and 36. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. Naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me. And please excuse my quoting from something Presbyterian, but in the Confession of 1967, after 340 years of living with the wretched, no, I shouldn't say it that way, living with the Westminster Confession, the Presbys finally came up with a new statement in which had some glorious passages, and this is one of them. Jesus, in his service to others, commits the church to work. For every form of human well-being. His suffering makes the church sensitive to all human suffering, so that it sees the face of Christ in the faces of persons in every kind of need. There you have it. So I'm going to start out with Amos, and I thought Amos is where it started with the lion roars. So I was going to shout the lion roars, but then I realized I might burst an eardrum. So I'm just going to say it. But with Amos, it's God who does the roaring, actually. But whoever it was, Amos, who's a farmhand after all, gets the attention of those Israelite townsfolk. Now, based on what Amos had to say, we might conclude that these farmhands are fairly knowledgeable and sophisticated lot. I think they are. Nonetheless, Amos is a foreigner from a town called Tekoa, which is in neighboring Judea. Amos has hauled his sturdy soapbox up into the town square. He plunks it down, he hops up on it, and he makes that shout. And he starts giving the folks in Israel a piece of his mind. But the Israelites can relax a little bit for at least a while, because it's the folks from the neighboring countries that he takes to task. And they have been up to some nasty stuff with one another. And there are a bunch of them, including Amos's own folks, the Judeans. But Amos is just warming up, because the Israelites haven't been doing their part at all. As Amos puts it, they have sold the righteous for silver, the needy for a pair of sandals. They have made their ascetic holy folk violate their standards of behavior, and their rich folk, for example, who Amos calls the cows of Bashan, love that line, have oppressed the poor and crushed the needy. In other words, they haven't been paying much attention to the passages from Deuteronomy, not to mention Matthew's comments a few centuries later. To me, just as it is for Amos, obedience here means saying it like it is and calling on people to change their arrogant and selfish ways and act in support of those whom they can clearly see are to be called the least of these. They are the widow, the orphan, the stranger, the hungry, the thirsty, the naked, the sick, and those who are oppressed, which led one of the Israelite chief priests, as you just heard, to ask Amos to back off. And given all that Amos has said about the price that all those countries must pay for their misdeeds, I suppose it is natural that Amaziah would call Amos a prophet. But that isn't the way Amos sees it. To him, these words are not his. After all, he isn't a prophet or the son of a prophet. But these are the words that God has given him. And if there is one thing that Amos clearly understands, that's it. God has called Amos to this task, and Amos has answered that call. So these are the kinds of things that come to my mind when I think about a time almost 60 years ago. I wouldn't say that He describes me as being lifted on eagle's wings, but it was a time of life-changing experience. In 1963, Marianne and I moved to Palo Alto, California, joined a church there. Folks referred to it as First Pres. Up until that time, we were regular churchgoers, occasionally involved in various activities. But joining First Pres turned out to be a significant change, because what was going on at that time was a proper, though not critical, part of our lives, took on much more significance, particularly in terms of seeing our religion affecting our social and political convictions. We very quickly discovered that the congregation was actively responding to God's call to support and promote causes related to peace and justice. To begin with, they were involved in the civil rights movement. And as it turns out, about that same time, a social service organization called the Mid-Peninsula Christian Ministry came into being in the neighboring town of East Palo Alto, a community that suffered from the scourge of racism. The minister assigned to staff it was experienced as an inner-city pastor, as familiar with community responsibilities as he was with conventional parish duties. He also had a clear interest in social justice. Once the pastor got going at Community House, he issued an open invitation to all the congregations in the area to come to worship services and orientation. People got involved. He also had organizational skills and experience at finding and utilizing the local community members. He quickly found East Palo Alto community members who were very able to take up leadership roles on their own in that community and spearheaded this unincorporated community's change to a city. He once described his style as leading from the middle. I love that. But his real gift was identifying and coaching real community leadership. Then in January of 1966, I got involved in an organization called The Session, which is like the Mission Council. And that began my, I guess you could call it, career as a sort of active layperson, a situation that lasted until about 10 years ago. I think it's fair to say that it was the most meaningful activity of my life. From that time on, I had some, though often minor, involvement in the church's response to all the major issues of the day. In time, participation in Community House led, for example, to exposure to the presentation of a book that was written by a member of the Community House staff, along with the Stanford prof. And, where did I lose my place? Well, I don't know where I lost my place, but the name of the book was Institutional Racism. And the thing that's curious about that to me is we now talk about systemic racism as though it was something new. This is almost 60 years ago. Anyway, but there are always challenges in the public sphere for the church to confront and address. For example, we got involved in supporting the farm workers, particularly by supporting Cesar Chavez and the then forming United Farm Workers. Then in 1972, we sent members of our congregation with a group called Clergy and Laity Concerned to Washington, D.C. to meet with members of Congress to encourage them to end the war in Vietnam. In 1974, Session sponsored a lesbian woman as a candidate for the ministry. It was my first exposure to the issue of LGBT rights. And at the time we started that relationship, I thought we might meet with some resistance from Presbytery, the local area group, because she continued to think of herself as a practicing Catholic. And I thought some conflict there. Never occurred to me that the big issue was homophobia. And that was what eventually kept her from being able to pursue her Presbyterian ordination. Even though our candidate wasn't allowed to pursue that, our explicit support of LGBT rights became an important aspect of our mission. In about 1984, we became the equivalent of what we now call an open and affirming congregation. On several occasions, the congregation provided sanctuary for refugees from all over the world whose lives were threatened or oppressed. Our pastors were committed to many aspects of justice as it relates to all kinds of issues, and that showed up in their sermons. Now, through the last many years, we've been involved in at least 3 different congregations, and in all of those cases, we have observed numerous church members responding to a variety of needs and often reminded of those words from Matthew that I read earlier. When we retired, we left the Bay Area and we moved up here to Washington State to be near our son and his family. And though we moved around a little bit since then, we've been here at Eagle Harbor for roughly 20 years. And it is, as it was in First Pres, the fact that many folks at Eagle Harbor have responded to calls of similar concerns. For example, there were folks who participated in a group called Women in Black, who often were silent public witnesses in support of peace. For several years now, we've participated in an area-wide multi-denominational consortium of churches called Faith Action Network that supports many issues related to peace and justice. Other activities have involved a substantial number of folk, including providing monthly soup suppers, like this evening, and a Halloween meal in support of UNICEF, which I guess we haven't been able to do in the last couple of years. But none of the ways I have found this, and one of the ways I have found this congregation most in keeping with its mission is as an open and affirming church, including marching in the annual Pride Parade. Finally, I was struck by an example of how calling can happen. We sat over, there's Marianne, we sat over in there, and up in front of us, a couple of rows, were a couple of women who were constant attenders. One was a sort of friendly, chatty, outgoing person, and the other was a quiet and reserved person. But they're no longer here. One has died and the other has moved away. But there was a time when the more reserved of the two took on an assignment to help Syrian refugees. And that responsibility required making announcements, encouraging members of the congregation to help supply the Syrian refugees with cookware and other kitchen items. I was struck by the fact that when she was called upon to make her request, she was not only more outgoing, but very engaging and articulate. Whatever her motivation was, she was clearly called to be persuasive and convincing in presenting her requests. Now today, we will soon write our annual letters to Bread for the World. So like those folks at First Pres and the folks at Eagle Harbor have through the years responded to God's calls, we're doing so now, and I'm sure we'll continue to do so in the future. And I think Amos would be pleased. Amen. Okay. Christ service.
may be seated. This is the traditional time in the congregation when we ask for prayers of celebration, of concern, of questioning anything that comes up. And traditionally what we do is we try to get the comments from the congregation. And if I could get maybe Bob, maybe you could help me by handling the mic. And if you have a question or a concern or a specific prayer request, raise your hand. Bob will give you the mic, and you'll be able to talk. I see something starting.
We're asking for prayer requests for our son Nathan, his significant other girlfriends. Her daughter was 12 and she died Friday through suicide. Just please put those prayers to God. And for any other young people having very serious questions about their lives.
Is there a name that we can use?
Her name was Kiki.
Kiki?
Yeah, K-I-K-I.
I'd like to ask prayers for our friends at Bethany Lutheran Church in their struggle to establish on their own property with no economic benefit to themselves at all an affordable housing project over lots of opposition that makes me kind of angry when I read some of that opposition. But they're going ahead with their effort to make this a truly caring community and a community where there's more diversity of people of different races and economic backgrounds and people who work here as well as who want to live here. So prayers for Bethany Lutheran in their progress and their endeavor.
Prayers for my dear friend Mary Karen Brown and our friend Mary Karen Brown. She knows that we're thinking of her. I know that. I also offer prayers for my dear friends who live across the hallway from me, Diana and Dave Torres. Some of you may know them from Super Supper. Both of them are having just a heck of a time with COVID, second or third time around for both of them.
I would ask prayers for Mary Brown and Mary Watterson, who actually got out of bed and came up to visit Mary Brown yesterday. Pretty an amazing experience to pray together with the three of them. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, draw close as we reach out for your blessings, wisdom, and healing. For the soul of young Kiki, who felt the need to move on. We mourn with Nathan and her mother. We reach out to everyone in need who challenges their life particularly the young, but everyone. May they seek the comfort and healing that will see the face of God and continue in life. Help us to recognize and support our friends at Bethany Lutheran as they struggle for affordable housing through what appears to be endless questions that seem constantly to be insignificant and perhaps driven in other areas. Well, maybe we stand in solidarity with our sister church. And of course, for on this day, Super Supper, Diana and Dave, longtime attendees, they have struggled with COVID issues on, and we miss them. We hope that they get better and can join us again on one of our Super Suppers. And of course, Mary Watterson, who is at Wyatt House and has been there for some time. She, in fact, is a strong member of the church still and has shown that by visiting and being with, of course, our dearest friend, Mary Brown. Mary Karen has been a pillar of this community, has preached to us, has pastored us, and has been a friend. And we will treasure every moment of her existence. And God of wisdom, help us to listen for the call from God, to be bold in our efforts to make a difference in improving the lives of those truly in need through our actions, through our financial contributions, individually and collectively. Show us the way in the footsteps of Jesus the Christ to face societal injustice straight on with unwavering strength, particularly when it seems much easier to just turn away and let others take the rocky path of championing a righteous cause. With your guidance, O Lord, may we strive to see all of humanity as children of God, to see the face of Christ when we gaze upon the poor, the unpopular, the weak, the refugee, each worthy of respect and dignity, each being provided with the love of community and the essentials of life. Thank you for standing firmly with us in the past as we in this congregation individually and collectively have provided a safe and welcoming haven for those seeking spiritual respite. And help us, Lord, to continue that momentum of love and acceptance into new areas where your power can make us soar to even greater heights of service. Amen. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all things will be well. All shall be well, and all shall be well, and all things will be well. We are now at the time of offering. It's kind of a dual project today. Let's begin as we do with carrying coins. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they've been lucky to have 5 Sundays this year. And it's actually an excellent resource. So let me remind you who we've been contributing. And just to, as you know, it's loose coins. Any loose coins that we get go to carrying coins. We don't keep those. But if you want to give more than what's in your pocket and making noises, you can always write a check or give us cash or whatever. Just write on the memo line that it's for carrying coins in the particular group that you want. These guys are called HRB, but let me tell you, Housing Resources Bainbridge. HRB is Bainbridge Island's only nonprofit affordable housing provider and advocate. HRB owns and develops land for affordable single-family dwellings, imposing income qualifications and regulating rent and sale prices. There are currently 44 of these dwellings on Bainbridge, with more on the way. HRB also owns 8 apartment properties with a total of 90 low-income rental units. In addition, HRB facilitates home repairs and modifications to help older adults and people with disabilities remain safely in their homes. So please provide your carrying coins to this very honorable organization, HRB, and also, of course, to EHCC in general. We're halfway through the year of our annual contributions, so don't forget that. You can put them in. And also, you can go online. You can go online and do the carrying coins. You can go online and make your own contributions to the church, or you can set up an automatic pay, which I found to be probably the easiest. So with that, I think what we're supposed to do now, and let's do the thing at the end of this next part. Next is your work. This is your work. And by the way, we already have a plate out in the narthex. Mary Wilson, she's always on top of things, so she did it before, so I didn't have to. So I hope you take a chance to glance through your bulletin, and you'll see we're going to spend 5 minutes. I'm going to keep track of it here. And I'll just tell you, when you write on this piece of paper, and we have some pens up here. I don't know, we probably should have gotten more of those. Taryn, maybe you could help us out. If people need pens, there's a big bucket of them in there. If you need a pen, raise your hand. Better not to use the pencil that you see in the. But go ahead and you'll see we were writing to Senator Senator Cantwell, Senator Murray, and Representative Derek Kilmer. You can pick whoever you want of those 3 that you want to write to, and they give you some thoughts about things to do, but use your own language. It doesn't have to be long. Put your name on it at the end and say that you're from EHCC. That's what I always do every year, so that when they get these letters, they'll know it's from us, and they'll know that we're local. And to be honest with you, I usually write to Derek because he's our guy. I mean, he's the guy we can go bang on his door. And they're the ones that are supposed to start this kind of legislation in the House. The Senate is a mess, as you know. But let's do this for the next 5 minutes. We'll be a little bit of music from Chris, and I'll try to keep on track of it and let her know when we're done. So take a few minutes to sign some letters for Bread for the World. Anybody need pens? Sheila's helping us out here. That's about 5 minutes, I guess. I can't find my envelope. I got too many pieces of paper flying. Well, anyway, I will find it. See, it's not very long. Mine's about that big, you know. And if you didn't finish, you can always hang around a little bit after and put your, fold it up. If you have an envelope, put it in there, say who it goes to, and we'll make sure that it gets a stamp and gets mailed to the right people. And with that, let us do our doxology. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise God, all creatures near and below. Praise God for all that love has done. Creator, Christ, and Spirit one. Gracious and loving God, please accept these gifts freely given and bless them as they support the continuing efforts of this church to fight injustice and seek equity, as these gifts join those of our sisters and brothers in the United Church of Christ in support of peace and justice everywhere. Amen. We're up to our last hymn. Let peace fill our world. Let peace fill our universe. Still on the angry cry, still on the angry cry, still now your people die, earth's sons and daughters. Let justice roll, let mercy pour down. Come and teach us your way of compassion. Lead us from death to life, from falsehood to trust, from fear to trust. Lead us from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts, let peace fill our world, let peace fill our universe. So many lonely hearts, so many broken lives, longing for love to break into their anguish. Come teach us love, come teach us peace. Come and teach us your way of compassion. Lead us from death to life, from falsehood to truth, from despair to hope, from fear to trust. Lead us from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts, let peace fill our world, let peace fill our universe. Justice evermore, let mercy fill the earth. Let us begin to grow into our people. We can be love, we can be peace, we can still be lead us from hate to love, from war to peace. Let peace fill our hearts, let peace fill our world, let peace fill our Go forth, sisters and brothers, and dive into the cool, cleansing pool of service to those in need, strengthening and nourishing your soul, because life itself has no meaning. Life is the opportunity to create meaning. Seize the gift of life and turn it into something truly glorious by service to others. Amen.
Amen.